welcome back to Talking Sports at Work. My name is Derek Persley. I am your host. Today is Thursday, I think. May. I don't know where I got February from, but it's May the 16th. I hope everyone is having a tremendous May so far. I know I have not been, we've not been doing episodes in, I think it's been about 2 weeks now, and it's, there are a variety of reasons for it, and really this is kind of just a check-in, quickie episode, although I know I say stuff like that and then end up talking for an hour and a half, so we'll see. But I just wanted to check in with everyone, all my thousands and thousands of adoring fans, and let everybody know that, we're still going to do the show. It's mostly just, like I said, a variety of reasons. One, it's football season, or football season's over. The free agency's done. The draft is done. There's nothing really happening in terms of college recruiting or anything there. But we did have the schedule released today, and I looked at tickets, and of course they are still stupid expensive for both the Vols and the Titans, and that is such a shame because I don't know, I look at it as though that's, several $100s that I could spend somewhere else, that I could save, that I could whatever, but at the same time, it's an experience for me and my kids that we'll always remember, and I want to be able to take them now that they're old enough to at least one game a year. So it's just a sort of internal debate that I have all the, every year about, is it worth it for the experience? Where else is that money going to go? Is it just going to end up being blown on stupid shit anyway? Probably half of it would be. But, it's crazy expensive. And I also don't like sitting up in the nosebleeds. I feel like I'd rather honestly stay at home and watch it than have to sit way up there. So the last time we went, what we did was we had nosebleed tickets, but we got there super early, and I looked on the one of the ticketing apps to see which seats were still unpurchased, and we just found some good seats and sat there. And we did end up having to move once. Somebody must have bought those tickets, But yeah, we ended up just moving down closer to like the 20-yard line, whereas we were at the 40. And yeah, it was a really good experience. I don't know if that's going to be available, if we're going to be able to do that every time. But, if I'm going to go, I want to be able to actually see the game. And plus, it sort of gives me a fear of heights thing, being up so high. It's uncomfortable, and especially having my boys there. And I'd like to be able to take Sis as well. I hate leaving her out of things, but anyway, I went off on a whole train of thought there that I did not intend on going down. But we did have the schedule release. NBA playoffs are really, really good right now. Only one series has been finished, and that was Boston. They beat the Cavs in 5. And what's crazy is that game that Cleveland won, I was planning on betting on them. I was going to just put a little bit of money because it was like plus 700 or something. And I was going to put a little bit of money on them, and I just didn't. I forgot. I had too much other stuff going on, and the game started, I think, at 7. And so by the time it started, anyway, so I missed out on that. I did hit on the Timberwolves as big underdogs in Game 2 against Denver. I did hit on that one, and that felt really good. But I put a little bit, just $25 on the Cavs last night. Not, just thinking it's worth it because they were plus 1,000, so it's a 10-to-1 payoff. So I put a little bit on that, thinking, Boston does have a history of sort of choking away games, or kind of settling, not playing their hardest in the playoffs, maybe overlooking some games. Anyway, Boston has a history of, for a variety of reasons, losing games that they should win in the postseason. So I thought, why not? And it was a very close game all throughout until the fourth quarter when Boston just really took over. And yeah, but the other series, man, they are awesome. I am loving the Timberwolves and Nuggets series. It's on again, I think, tonight. And man, those two are just going back and forth. And I had actually thought, I had talked about it in an episode, and I don't even know if I published this episode, but I may have talked about it and published the episode at one point, how it felt like the media was trying to force this rivalry between Minnesota and Denver. And I actually ended up getting mentioned on ESPN radio about that because they were talking about like budding rivalries. And so I tweeted at Chris Canty about the upcoming real UT rivalry that's going to happen between Tennessee and Texas now in the SEC. And so he mentioned my name, which was really cool on ESPN radio. But anyway, they were really trying to force this rivalry, and there was really no reason for it to be a rivalry aside from that these were the two really good teams in the Western Conference. One especially is still very young, and it felt like this could become a thing for a while, and now it looks like it really will. The first two games, it looks like Minnesota's going to run away with this. Going into the series, everybody thought, Denver's going to take them in probably 5. They might be able to get it to 6. But then Minnesota handles them and goes up 2-0 in their own building. But then Denver comes back and wins the 2 games in Minnesota. So the away team had won every game up until this most recent one. Denver's now up 3-2. So Minnesota's got to win tonight. And I'm really hoping they win. I do not like Denver. I appreciate Jokic. I like him, but I don't like anything else about that team. Don't like the coach. Don't like Jamal Murray. He's a little bitch and should have gotten in more trouble than he did for throwing shit on the court while play was going on. But yeah, I do not like Denver. And I really do like this young Minnesota team, man. They are for real. And anyway, and that's just one. Then you've got the Thunder and Mavericks series, one that I also have, I think, won a little bit on. I don't bet on every game, but, when it's basketball, if there's something I feel like I'm going to, I do. I bet a lot on football, but on basketball, it's just kind of sporadic. But yeah, Dallas is up now 3-2 over OKC, and that's been a very good series. I picked Dallas to win that series. But man, the Thunder are giving them a run, but now they've got to go to Dallas and win Game 6 in order to take it to a Game 7. So we'll see how that works out. And then you've got on the other side the Knicks and Pacers series, which honestly I thought the Pacers might win, but I think the Knicks are now up 3-2. I think the Knicks are overrated. Everybody just wants them to be good because, New York controls the media. And so, and I think a lot of people have the same sort of feelings that I do about the Knicks and the Jets and the Yankees and Mets. We're so sick of them. They are not nearly good enough to get the media coverage that they do. None of them, ever, except for the Yankees. The Yankees are the one exception. And then the Giants when they are good. But yeah, I don't like the Jets. I'm always so sick of hearing about them. I don't like the Knicks. I'm always so sick of hearing about them. And so anyway, I think they're overrated because so many people in the media are Knicks fans. Media in New York is sort of the media capital of the world. But anyway, that's off on a tangent there. But yeah, we've got 3 really good series. And honestly, I do not know who's going to come out of the West. I could see it being any of those 4 teams. So really good stuff there. Kevin Durant is apparently unhappy, which just makes me laugh. Anyway, a few things to talk about, but this isn't going to be a long episode. I actually promise it is not going to be a long episode. Just really kind of checking in and saying hi to everybody. I am going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Hey friends, back again. So I just wanted a quick full disclosure here. I actually did record an episode, I believe it was last week, but I just didn't feel good about it. I spent the first 30 minutes of it kind of rambling about Israel and Palestine and how I really just don't understand this huge wave of support for Palestine. And not just that, I'm okay with support for Palestine, but this visceral anti-Israel stuff that has been happening amongst people who are, a lot of times people I agree with on at least economic issues. I'm pretty far left when it comes to economic stuff, and I'd say I'm center left when it comes to most social issues. But the left wing, especially the far left, have been it's been crazy. And anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again, but I don't really understand it. I mean, this is a culture that, as part of who they are, dehumanizes an entire gender. And, I don't know much about the Palestinian people individually, but speaking about that region and Arabic, Islamic culture, we know how badly they mistreat their women. And I mean, this is also a culture that I'm not going to say, I don't want to generalize too much because I don't want to sound like I'm, I, I, I don't know, right, too far right or anything. But, this is, if we're talking about one versus the other, it feels like, when's the statute of limitations here? Because you want to say Israel is occupying this land, but they have been there since about the time my mom was born. And Israel as a nation has existed. Also, that's the only nation of its kind for the Jewish people. That is the only place they have of their own in the world. And if we're talking about, who needs to go? Let's face it, Palestine could move. The Palestinians could be just at home, just as comfortable and at home, moving a little bit south to Egypt or a little bit north to Syria, or go on over a little bit east to Iran. I think those are the right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know my geography there, but these are all people that, although I'm sure they have a lot of differences. I imagine the differences between Palestinians and Syrians is probably like the difference between a Tennessean and a New Yorker, or an Alabama person and someone from Canada. It's still largely, it's the same religion, it's the same culture, it's a lot of the same stuff. And I'm not saying that it's fair to just go take somebody's land because you can go somewhere else, but where else are the Israelis going to go? Where else do they have? This is the only nation they have of their own. And I understand a lot of their policies as of late have gone too far right and have been a little bit to the extreme. And Netanyahu has put in place a lot of policies that I don't agree with. But that's not, it feels like, the bigger issue here. The bigger issue is these are two nations who are at war, and it feels like, I don't know, can't they just find a way to coexist? I know that, the West pretty much arbitrarily drew up these lines and said, okay, this is yours and this is yours, a long time ago. But, that's sort of the nations that they have. And I don't understand why these two can't just coexist, and why now so many Americans have gone away from that, which has always sort of been the standard, I think, American mindset, is let's just find a way for them to coexist, to now where many of them are completely anti-Israel, and completely to the point with a lot of them where it is verging on or well over the line of anti-Semitic. And that one guy who was leading the protest at I think it was Columbia. Was it Columbia? It was one of the Ivy League schools. He was leading the protest, and he had done a video in the early stages of the protest saying Zionists deserve to die. And he later retracted that. He later did a video and apologized for that. But still, this is the mindset of a lot of these people. I don't get it. Where did we go? How did we go from let's find a way for them to peacefully coexist to where now we're full on, many of the American left and young people are full on pro Palestine and anti Israel? That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm very well educated on the subject. I am not. This is not a region or a topic that I am very well versed in or even all that interested in. But I know a little bit. And I mean, anyway, those are my thoughts. I would like to be able to speak to someone who has that mindset that it seems to be increasingly common, especially among young people and especially among people on the left. I'd like to be able to talk to somebody and get them to explain that, how you are so in favor of a culture that dehumanizes women. Many of them weaponize religion. And I know that that's stereotyping, and I know that not all Muslims are terrorists, but this is a region and a culture and a religion that has grown up in war and has been defined by war for so long. And it is a religion that is much more easy to weaponize and has been a lot over the last several years. Not to mention the fact that if we're just talking about American interests, it's obviously better for us to be supporting Israel. You've got a country over there who is very similar to the West, and in everything just about. And I think, and it's good for American diplomacy. It's good for our interest to have them there and for us to support them. And maybe that's not a moral or ethical reason, but speaking as an American, that's the truth. And so I just don't get this complete shift from let's find a way for them to coexist to where now it's Israeli, illegal Israeli occupation, and Zionists deserve to die, and Palestine deserves their land back. And I don't get it. And of course, there's no one around here that can explain it to me because I live in East Tennessee. But if there is anyone listening who would like to chat about that, hit me up, message me. If you've got my number, give me a call or, comment on the podcast, comment on the YouTube channel or something. I would love to have a conversation about this. Anyway, that's the rabbit hole I went down on the last episode and didn't want to do this time, but I did anyway. So I'm going to take a quick break and we'll talk about some sports stuff and I'll be right back. Alrighty, hey friends. So I'm gonna keep my promise to you. This is gonna be a short episode, and I just wanted to look at some topics while I was on. Took a little break there. And we're gonna go through the topics that I have on my notes, even some of the ones that I did on that episode that was previously unreleased or still unreleased. So I'm gonna do sort of a lightning round on these topics, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll chat about some more stuff very briefly. So first of all. We talked about the playoffs. Kevin Durant now is unhappy in Phoenix. And my God, man. I mean, there is one thing that is obvious for him to do if he wants to make anything else of his career from now until the end of it, which is approaching fast. That is go to LA and hook up with LeBron. That is the one thing he can do to salvage his career, his reputation, even though he will still be the guy that could only win when he joined. If he cannot win a championship when he is the guy. That has been proven over and over and over. He's been given great talent. He's been given great situations. He's been given great coaches. He runs the coaches out of town. He gets in disagreements with the talent. It just doesn't work. He is one of the best players of all time, but he cannot lead a team to a championship. I don't know how anyone can have any doubts about that anymore. And I actually talked about that during their first round series in which they got swept by the Timberwolves. If you listen to that episode, then you can go back. I was already talking about this stuff a couple of weeks ago, and now it has been leaked that he's unhappy in Phoenix. They've already fired Frank Vogel and hired somebody. I can't even remember who it was they hired, but he as soon as he got there, he got a really, really good coach, and Monty Williams fired. And I think it was Monty Williams. Anyway, but the situation in New York and Brooklyn, that cannot be entirely blamed on him. That was a lot of Kyrie's fault for the whole vaccination thing and missing most of the season, missing almost all of your home games that year because he would not do the vaccination. And I get that, and that's whatever you want to say. That's not the topic, but that was not fully on Durant. But we saw in Oklahoma City, that team was as stacked as it gets. 3 men who have since won MVPs on that team, and a good supporting cast. Steven Adams, Serge Ibaka was on that team. That team was loaded, but they were young and they were growing. If he would have stayed there, there's no telling how good they could have been. Now, they were probably going to get rid of Harden anyway because they couldn't afford to keep him. And they ended up, I think, trading him to Houston, or was that a free agent thing? I can't remember. But, that team was so stacked with Harden, Durant, Westbrook, Ibaka, Steven Adams. And, I mean, anyway. And then he has the Warriors, the defending champion Warriors, down 3-1. Has them down. Oklahoma City's got it. They're gonna go to the finals. This might be their year. They did make the finals a couple years prior, but this is their year. Maybe they can win it all. They've got the defending champs down, the 72-win Warriors. That was the season that the Warriors won 72 games. Had them down 3-1 and lost. The Warriors came back, won the next 3 games, and what does he do? And that's the thing that I think people forget that I need to continue to remind people about that, because we all know that Kevin Durant jumped ship and Kevin Durant can't win if he's the main guy on the team and all this stuff about Durant. The thing that I think people forget is that he not only left that great team that had drafted him, he went to the team. He not only left that great team, he not only went to the team that had already won a championship the year prior and won 72 games that year, he went to the team that just embarrassed him in the playoffs. He went and joined that team the next offseason. The Thunder had them down 3-1. The Warriors came back and embarrassed them. That's the thing that I think people forget. And then a few weeks later, he goes and joins that team. That's what's just that's what blew my mind about the whole thing. But yeah, he goes and he joins a team that is already a champion, that had already won 72 games the year prior, and that had just eliminated his team from the postseason. He goes and joins them. And so what happens? Yeah, of course they're great. I mean, that team was a juggernaut, but it was never Kevin Durant's team. There was no debate about that. It was still Steph's team. He was the guy on that team. Durant was probably the better player, but it was Steph's team. There was never any shadow of a doubt about that for those few years. They won 2 championships, so Kevin Durant can say he's won 2 championships. He can even say that he's won 2 championships on a team where he was probably the best player. But everybody knows the truth. That was Steph's team. They had already won a championship without him. They probably could have continued winning championships even if he hadn't joined. And yeah, so anyway, he does that. And then he decides, okay, now I've got a couple rings under my belt, kind of did what LeBron did when he went and, hooked up with D Wade and brought Chris Bosh, although that was a very different thing because LeBron went and they created that team. It was already D Wade's team, but he came, Bosh came. It wasn't like he just went and joined a super team. Miami had not that much except a really good young coach and Dwayne Wade at that point. But they went down there and built a champion. And anyway, so Durant does that. He says, I've kind of gone the LeBron route. I went somewhere. I learned how to win, learned how to be a champion. Now I want to go somewhere where I can make my own thing. So he goes to Brooklyn. Gets Kyrie to join up with him. It was a little bit later, they get them to make a trade for James Harden. They've got Ben Simmons. That team was very, very good. And we all know how that turned out. It was a huge disappointment. Kyrie was a drama queen and caused a lot of problems. Durant was his usual pouty self. And they just never amounted to anything. Even though, for at least one of those years, maybe 2, they were probably the best team in the NBA in terms of talent. So that failed. So then he forces his way out of there, goes to Phoenix. They've got to be a juggernaut now, right? Devin Booker is already one of the best players in the world. They still had Ayton at that point. I think he's gone now. But Booker's there. You bring Durant. This is a team that's already on the rise that had they been to the finals before? Yeah, they had been to the finals too. That just now occurred to me. Even though they didn't win the championship, the Suns had just been to the finals either that year or the year prior whenever Durant joined them. So he goes and joins a team that's already, a winner, a really good team in the harder Western Conference. They've got to be able to do something, right? Nope. Can't make the finals. I guess they probably made it to the second round last year. I don't even remember. Well, I think they had injuries last year. I can't remember. Anyway, nothing meaningful happens there. They trade away Ayton. They acquire Bradley Beal. It's supposed to make him even better. And then they get swept in the first round this year by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And if anybody needs any more evidence that Kevin Durant cannot win as the guy with his team, I don't know what you've been watching for the last entirety of his career. But there is one thing he can do. If he still wants a chance, he can go to LA. They can find a way to clear enough cap space and make that work. Now, of course, Phoenix is not going to let him go for free, and that's the problem. LA obviously doesn't have a ton of draft capital to work with. They'd probably have to send Austin Reeves and every draft pick they have in the bank, but it'd be worth it. Get Kevin Durant still at the tail end of his prime. LeBron still playing at an all-star level. AD still playing at an all-star level. And now you've got a big three. Bring in some veteran talent around them. You can keep D'Lo. You can keep some of the. But anyway, that's the one place he can go where I think he would be wanted. He would be celebrated, and he could make a run for a championship. I don't know where else would make any sense for him at this point in his career, except to go to LA or stay in Phoenix and try to do something there. But we're getting reports that he's not happy, so he's probably on his way out of there. Unless he wants to go and try to join Luka and Kyrie again, hook back up with Kyrie, that would be interesting. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't options for him. Obviously, he could go wherever. There are tons of teams that would want him. But the one that just makes the most sense in my mind, that would get the most attention, that would get him sort of a lot of praise, would be him and LeBron finally teaming up at the end of their prime, making a run at a championship, which if you add Kevin Durant to that team, even if you have to give up Austin Reeves, I don't know who else you'd have to give up, but adding Durant to that team with those three, yes, that is now a championship team in the West. So anyway, if Kevin Durant is listening, of course he's not, but if anybody knows him, tell him what I just said, because that's his only option to salvage his career. Anyway, I'm going to take another quick break. I did not mean to spend that long. God, I always do this, don't I? All right, I'll be back. Hey friends, back again. So, I'm going to go ahead and go through that lightning round of topics that I promised you. First off, the NFL schedule came out. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. They're going to be doing, I think, 2 Christmas games, which is on a Wednesday this year, so I don't know how they're going to make that work, but they do. They will. It's the NFL. They'll do what they want to do. They have taken over Christmas. It no longer belongs to the NBA, and that happened pretty quickly. They're also, I assume, going to do another Black Friday game, because that was pretty cool. Netflix is going to have at least one exclusive. It might be the Christmas games now that I think about it. Are on Netflix. The Titans have a pretty tough schedule, honestly. Except our first 2 games are honestly winnable. If I remember, who are we opening the season against? Crap. Is it the Giants? It's not the. Oh man. I know we played the Jets week 1, and we should win that game, honestly. Even if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I think we should win that game. Who are we playing? Oh, the Bears. That's right. The Bears, the team that everybody... So we might get a national TV game there, because everybody's going to want to see Caleb Williams debut. That's going to be interesting, but that's a team that obviously we can beat. And hopefully will, but it's on the road. It's Caleb Williams' pro debut. It's going to be very exciting, and hopefully on national TV. Hopefully we'll get the A team. Would it be Nance and Romo? I guess. Also, another thing, Brady has now taken Greg Olson's spot. Greg Olson has been demoted to number 2, so you got to think somebody, maybe Netflix, somebody will be trying to steal him very quickly. Greg Olson was awesome. Everybody loved him. He was very quickly translated from an elite NFL tight end, Hall of Famer, to an elite play-by-play color guy. He was wonderful. So he's going to end up being the number 1 guy somewhere before long again. Another thing that I've just got to mention when it comes to the schedule is... And I don't know why I put this on my notes. I'm trying to remember, but there was a reason why I had this. But we're still doing this 17-game thing. We know that it's eventually going to go to 18. So why don't we just go ahead and do it now? Oh, that's what I was thinking. I think I was trying to think of ways to do exactly what the NFL always wants to do, which is just extend their season and extend football stuff as much as we can. So why don't we just go ahead and go to 18 games? We know what's going to happen, so let's just go ahead and do it. And the one way that you can even extend it further and sort of help with the 18-game thing, why don't we have 2 byes like college football does? that's basically giving you 2 extra weeks of football. That's allowing the Super Bowl to bleed over into the beginning of March. Maybe. But that's given us 2 extra weeks of football, and it just makes sense. We know they're going to go to 18 games eventually anyway. Let's just go ahead and do it. And the way that you can maybe make it palatable to the NFLPA and whoever is by giving them an extra bye week. And that also gives you give us 2 weeks of extra football. And I mean, who would not want that? That's awesome, right? All right. So anyway, that's my idea. If anybody knows anybody at the NFL head offices or whatever, the Brady roast, I don't care about it. I didn't watch it. I am sick of hearing about it. Please stop. I don't know why this is such a big deal. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason, speaking of TV people, have now been, I don't know if they've been fired or just demoted or what, but they are no longer going to be on CBS's pregame and postgame, the NFL Today, whatever, which sucks because I really like both of them. And they're replacing them essentially with, that table was getting pretty crowded, but they're basically replacing them with J.J. Watt, and who is okay. I mean, I don't have anything other than his, history as a Texan against my Titans. I don't know how I feel about him as a TV person yet, but I know I like Phil and Boomer, and that sucks. I love Nate Burleson. I've loved him since way back in his early days with Good Morning Football, which is now also in some sort of purgatory because apparently I think ESPN is buying NFL Network, which I don't know how that's not going to present some huge conflicts of interest, but they're now buying NFL Network. NFL Total Access, which was sort of the flagship show for NFL Network, has now been canned and will no longer be airing. Good Morning Football has been off the air for most of this year. We don't know what's going to happen. Well, actually, no, I read they're going to be, I think, moving from New York to LA, and then we'll resume filming. And you got to think, sometime before preseason starts, hopefully that will be back on. But anyway, now on CBS, I guess it's going to be JB, Bill Cowher, Nate Burleson, and J.J. Watt. If anybody, I honestly think they should have gotten rid of Bill Cowher. I just don't think he's that interesting as a TV guy. He's a wonderful coach. I've just never thought he was very good on TV. So I'm surprised that it's the two who are definitively good TV personalities that they're getting rid of and keeping coach. That's surprising to me. But whatever, it's happening. Change is coming. The other, I guess this will be the last topic. Two more really. The people need to pay attention, and I've probably talked about this before. I know I've had it on my notes for a long time and tried to talk about it, for various reasons. I think I've left it, but I'm sure I've mentioned it before. People need to start paying attention to the AFC South quarterbacks, because this is, I think, about to become maybe the best division in football when it comes to young quarterback talent, with CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Will Levis, who I, am about 75% sold on, maybe 80, and Anthony Richardson, who looked much better than I expected him to as a rookie. I thought he was going to struggle as a rookie, but he looked really good, and until he got hurt, and now he's had, all that time to learn and sit, and he's had a full off season. He's going to be even better. I mean, this could be the best division in football when it comes to quarterback play for a very, very long time, because the oldest of those guys is Trevor Lawrence. And he also might end up being the worst quarterback in the division with the way that these other guys have looked, which is crazy to think. But people need to start paying attention to the AFC South quarterback play. We have put a ton of talent around Will Levis. There's still a lot of work to be done, but adding Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins actually stayed healthy for pretty much all of last year. Adding Tyler Boyd, who's an elite slot receiver. Adding J.C. Latham as a left tackle and Lloyd Cushenberry at center, making big strides to improve the offensive line. Adding Tony Pollard, who's really just like another version of Tajay Spears. So now you've got 3 versatile, 3 down backs to play that you can do the same kind of stuff with both of them. Will Levis has a lot of talent around him. So, this is obviously his prove-it year. And I think he's going to be big. I think Anthony Richardson is also going to be very good, although I didn't believe in him either, just like I didn't believe in Will Levis going into that draft. But we know what CJ Stroud is already. Trevor Lawrence, honestly, surprisingly, still feels like kind of the jury's still out on him. He was that generational talent, the best, highest-rated quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. But he really might end up being the worst quarterback in this division. So that's something to pay attention to, because everybody's going to be talking about the NFC North quarterbacks with Caleb Williams, with J.J. McCarthy, with Jordan Love, and now Jared Goff's gotten a new contract. People need to pay attention to the AFC South quarterbacks as well. The last thing that I'm going to mention, and I may have mentioned this before, is I can't, and I'm not going to talk about this anymore after this. I need to let this go, and I actually had until I saw it on my notes earlier. I can't help but wonder if we could have traded that 7th pick to Minnesota for 11 and 23. I mean, we know that they were already planning on having to trade up. That's why they acquired another first-round pick. That's why they got 23 in the first place, because they knew they were likely going to be needing more draft capital and more ammunition to trade up to get a quarterback. We know they were making tons of calls. So I can't help but think, could we have gotten those picks for 7? Now, I know we would have had to probably give something else up, too. At least a 4. We didn't have a 3rd-round pick, but I think we might have had 2 4s. So I think we could have given, especially because the talk was already going around that Atlanta's looking quarterback at that point. Adam Schefter was on TV just before they were on the clock saying Atlanta might be taking a quarterback. And I'd heard stuff about it before, so you know that Minnesota had to be hearing that, so they had to be making calls. And if they would have offered 11 and 23 for 7 and maybe our 2 4th-round picks, I mean, come on. I cannot fathom that we passed on that. So I hope that the offer was never on the table. I don't know if we'll ever know, but the thing is, if we would have taken that, I've gone through this multiple times, through this possibility. If that happened, we still most likely would have gotten J.C. Latham at 11. Unless New York took him at 10, which they might have. But even if they did, that still leaves Fashanu for us, who I like just as much. And is a definitive, was the best pass-blocking tackle in the draft, and has the highest ceiling of anybody in the draft, any tackle in the draft. So we would have still ended up with one of those 2 guys and gotten the 23rd overall pick, which could have been used on Johnny Newton. Who else was, I ran this mock, Brian Thomas might have still been there. There were a lot of really good options, but I remember the one that I think I did in my mock, whenever I did mock this a couple times, was I still got Latham at 11, and then at 23, I got Johnny Newton. So then we've still got that 2nd-round pick. We don't have to spend that on T'Vondre Sweat now, because we've got an even better one in Newton at the end of the 1st round. Now we can use that on, I can't remember. I wish I would have made notes about who it all was. But there were still some elite DBs. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I know, was still on the board at our 2nd-round pick. Adonai Mitchell would have been the one that I would have taken there. So if we make that trade, sure, we don't get our 2 4th-round picks, so we lose Cedric Gray and whoever else it was. But we still get Latham. We get an even better interior defensive lineman, most likely, in Johnny Newton. And we could get Adonai Mitchell in the beginning of the 2nd round. I just think if that offer was on the table, even if we had to give up both of our 4th-round picks as well, or a 3rd next year maybe, I can't imagine we passed on that. So maybe the offer was never there. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. That is all. I'm taking that off my list. I'm done thinking about that. Everything's done. I like J.C. Latham. I did not like the pick at first because he's always been a right tackle and it made no sense. But shortly after he was drafted, he did an interview and he said that he had already spoken with offensive line coach Bill Callahan, who is recognized as probably the best offensive line coach in the game. and they were planning on moving him to the left side. So as soon as I heard that, I was much, much happier about the pick. Because if Bill Callahan says he likes this guy, and apparently he had him as the number one offensive lineman on his board all along. So if he likes him, he knows what he's talking about, and if he thinks he can move to the left side, I'm good with that. So we've got our left side, blind side protector for Will Levis, which is the biggest need we had going in. T'Vondre Sweat, I've said that felt like a reach to me for a player who's probably only going to play first and second down. But if he can lose some weight, which apparently he is, maybe he can become a 3-down player. And I mean, it's going to be a force on first and second down. It is going to be impossible to run against us with him up there and Jeffrey Simmons up there. Boy, that is a tandem. So, that's exciting. And I also really like the Cedric Gray pick. And yeah, I love our offseason as a whole. Adding L'Jarius Sneed via trade, adding Chidobe Awuzie. I already mentioned my favorite, which was Calvin Ridley. I was so happy about that. Just signed Tyler Boyd a few days ago. Added Lloyd Cushenberry. Added Kenneth Murray, who still has the potential to be really good. And that could make a really good young linebacker duo with him and Cedric Gray. Who else did we get? Tony Pollard, which was a surprising one, but then, you've got two backs like that. So Brian Callahan, I'm going to trust, knows what he's doing. And it's very exciting for Tennessee fans right now. Also super exciting for Vols fans. Even more reason to be very optimistic about next year and our chances to make the playoffs. But anyway, we'll save all that for another time. We got plenty of Vols talk, plenty of Titans talk. And we've still got a couple months before anything even begins. And also in a couple of months, thank the Lord above, NCAA football is coming back. I'm sure they're not going to call it that. I think it's just going to be called EA College Football. But thank the heavens above. It broke my heart. You guys really don't understand how much that meant to me and how much it broke my heart when they took it away. I loved that game more than Madden. I played it probably twice as much as I played Madden. I loved that game throughout my entire childhood and, teens and early adulthood. I love that game, and I am just so excited. For the last 2 years, I have been so excited and can't wait, and now it's only 2 more months away. So, excuse me. Anyway, I hope everyone has a great Thursday. I hope you have a great weekend. I have got a lot on my plate, but I've got schoolwork to do. I'm working again on my novel, so that's another thing that has been taking some time. I hope you guys are proud of me about that, and I really hope to make some progress with it. And I'm having some issues with my work. My company is kind of screwing me over again with my pay, and that's been a whole ordeal. But anyway, I've got a lot going on, a lot on my plate, but I'm going to try to do another video sometime, either tonight, tomorrow, or over the weekend, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, hopefully I'll talk to you guys again soon. Hope everyone has a great Thursday, great weekend, and yeah, love you, bye.